You don't want to feel like an imposter.
I'm here with my good friend Eric Prush. Thank you for coming back to the show. You all might remember him as a strength and conditioning coach, a martial artist, and a strong advocate for wellness and fitness. So it's good to have you back.
My journey with Jiu-Jitsu is a long one. I'll just say I took a long break after I got my blue belt, came back. And whenever you go to a new school, you essentially start over from the beginning of that belt. So I was a blue belt for a very, very long time. You need to know what you're studying, what you're trying to accomplish in any given day. And I think I probably developed that through switching gyms a few times and frankly getting my ass handed to me.
Doing a constant reset of goals and expectations is really important. And I don't know if you realize that you kept doing that, but you did.
My ego got me in a lot of trouble, but weirdly, the turbulence created in my life by my ego-driven decisions made me a phenomenal competitor. But even then, some days it's just not your day, and some days it is. I think you just have to know when to care and when not to care. I think that's the only answer that I can really give. Like, I still train probably unreasonably hard for a guy who's 39, who has kids.
This episode of Candid Minds with Dr. T and friends is brought to you by Mindful Care. All right, welcome back to another episode of Candid Minds with Dr. T. I'm here with my good friend Eric Prush. Thank you for coming back to the show. You all might remember him as a strength and conditioning coach, a martial artist, and a strong advocate for wellness and fitness. So it's good to have you back.
It's been a while, Doc. I appreciate it, my friend.
Absolutely. And today we're going to discuss pressure, performance, and what it takes to be at peace with your training. I felt like that would be a good topic, particularly with your training in jiu-jitsu, to give us a little bit of insight as to what it's like rising in the ranks of a practitioner and how you've evolved as an individual. Curious if you felt along the way the level of pressure change, the expectation change, and how you navigated that.
Definitely changes all the time. I think it's specific to the school you're in. I think if you're in a school with a distinct culture where there are expectations of the upper belts, which I think is a good place to be, by the way, then for sure you feel the need to understand the art better as you progress. You feel the need to protect yourself from the lower belts as you're kind of coming up. You don't want to feel like an imposter when you get promoted, right? And so I think as I've gone up, once I got promoted to purple belt, I felt like that's usually someone saying, hey, listen, you don't suck at this. Like one day you could get a black belt if you keep doing this. That to me is what a purple belt means. From that point on, I felt like
validation.
Yes, for sure. And at that point, I felt like the expectations changed, and I definitely started taking training even more seriously because I was so happy that someone saw that in me that I did not want to embarrass them for seeing it in me. I wanted to deliver on my end of the deal.
Did you feel like I'm an imposter leading up to that?
Not really. My journey with Jiu-Jitsu is a long one. I'll just say I took a long break after I got my blue belt, came back. And whenever you go to a new school, you essentially start over from the beginning of that belt. So I was a blue belt for a very, very long time, to the point of where a friend of mine who owned his own school, I would train there maybe once a month, one day just gave me a purple belt. He was like, this is way overdue. Just please take this. Like, you're not a blue belt anymore. But for sure, when I went to Sarah and began training with Jason Rao, I would say I was one of the worst purple belts in the gym when I got there. And that's when I was like, okay, I've put a lot of time in this. I'm not going to quit. I have to make my investment back in terms of a time. And I think that's really when I stepped up the intensity of not just like how hard I was training, but trying to understand the techniques on a deeper level.
So it's interesting. The imposter syndrome is very real. I could tell you when I first became a CEO of a decently sized company and saw the amount of people that work here and the amount of patients that we see, and it was very overwhelming. I think I had to pretend that it's all under control and I'm not scared, but I was very scared when I was handed the keys and told, like, run this operation. It almost happened overnight where it became that big and was very overwhelming. And it is really scary. So imposter syndrome is a thing. But I think what you did that was really healthy, and it actually translates to a lot of stuff, not just the pressure of jiu-jitsu, but anyone who is seeing pressure at home with a growing family, at work with more responsibilities or promotion at work, doing a constant reset of goals and expectations is really important. And I don't know if you realize that you kept doing that, But you did. When you got that purple belt from your friend, when you switched to Sarah, you constantly did like a hard reset as to this is the new baseline. This is what I expect of myself. This is what I'm going to do and work towards. And what you didn't do is roll forward your previous self. So your work ethic, your mentality, your drive, if you had bad habits, you almost checked all those at the door and started fresh. And that actually applies to a lot of people in a lot of scenarios, and translates well from jiu-jitsu, because if you don't do that when pressure changes, you don't recalibrate to the new pressure, that's when you risk eventually burning out and being unable to sustain it, right? Because the recalibration is where your perspective changes and you shift to ground yourself again, and you know what you're dealing with. So it's like entering like think of like a stepwise function or a new level that you jumped. Mm-hmm. You have to reassess the lay of the land, know what you're dealing with, come up with a roadmap as to how you're going to overcome it, and execute on that roadmap. And you did that, naturally.
It's funny. It was kind of unconscious.
Yeah.
It was kind of, I was fortunate, when I started doing jiu-jitsu, all the guys that won jiu-jitsu tournaments were actually wrestlers. At the time, jiu-jitsu wasn't evolved enough to beat really good wrestlers, so I started training with a wrestling team. So this is while I was maybe still a blue belt or a white belt, and it was very humbling to walk into a new room and be demolished by college wrestlers. I had no experience. It was some of the biggest humiliation I've ever suffered in my entire life. But I think having jumped schools a few different times, I was able to learn how to recalibrate expectations based on where I was at. I think it's something I did correctly by accident, but it certainly did work out for me. I was always able to take the temperature of the room and be like, all right, how can I get the most out of this experience? And truthfully, if you're doing jiu-jitsu and you're not going in with a goal and a plan and trying to get the most out of the experience, you're wasting your time. Like you need to know what you're studying, what you're trying to accomplish in any given day. And I think I probably developed that through switching gyms a few times and frankly getting my ass handed to me.
Yeah, I think experiencing that makes you stronger, right? If it came to you easily, sure. I don't see it. I don't think you'd be where you are today.
It's the curse of talent sometimes.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is a lot of times we see athletes deal with insecurity. Mm-hmm. And they navigate pressure, but they feel like there's this constant humiliation, and they wanna prevent that. So there's this fear that they might get humiliated, and that triggers a sense of survival where they have to overcome. And what we've seen as a strategy is using performance enhancing drugs, sure. Right? To incorporate ways to have an advantage to prevent that humiliation or have an edge, or it's almost protective in some ways. Mm-hmm. How do you feel in jiu-jitsu individuals have used it to their advantage? Does it make sense, or do you feel like it's kind of unnecessary and people are being too aggressive because of that fear that they have?
Sure. I mean, we look at the broad umbrella of sports. We'll definitely just specifically answer jiu-jitsu, but there are certainly some sports that are probably healthier to do on PEDs than not. In particular, like very serious, like endurance athletics, like the effects of doing the Tour de France, let's say, on your body are so deleterious. You're losing bone mineral density by the end of the race that using testosterone and other drugs is actually probably healthier than not. Okay. I don't know that that's the case with jiu-jitsu necessarily, okay? Certainly taking drugs will help you tolerate higher training volumes, higher training intensities without getting injured, or in a lot of cases in jiu-jitsu, like getting staph infections, skin diseases. These are real, like, potential career derailing or life-ending things that sound like a joke if you don't do the sport, but they are very serious. But jiu-jitsu, there's no drug testing.
Right.
Right? And I think, anyone who reaches the top of anything in athletics is very competitive. And I think it is unrealistic, even if it is unfortunate, to expect these people to consolidate or compartmentalize their competitive drive to just what happens on the mat or in the ring or in the cage. It's going to be everywhere. There's a reason why Michael Jordan was a degenerate gambler, you could say, right? A lot of these guys, they have to win at everything. They're always thinking about winning. And it's never just going to be, how I do on the mat, like that's it. No, their whole life is going to apply to this in some way. When everyone else is using drugs, even if they don't actually help, although they do, okay, you're going to want to use them just for the mental edge, right? Just to feel like you've checked a box, like, okay, that guy doesn't have that on me. Now, of course, PEDs do work, you could use them incorrectly and they could be problematic for your health and for your performance. So using the right drugs at the correct doses is important for any sport. Every sport's going to have different drugs and different doses that should be utilized for maximum possible outcome, for the best possible outcome. But in jiu-jitsu, there's no drug testing, okay? So right away, you have a Wild West situation. Guys are going to do whatever they have to do, okay? Top-level competitors will compete quite frequently. It's not like you're making top-tier boxing money to fight 2 or 3 times a year. A lot of these guys might be competing a couple times a month. They do it all the time, so there is wear and tear on the body. Also, it's not the kind of sport that you're making a ton of money from just the sport. A lot of these guys are also teaching, and they're teaching private lessons, which is additional wear and tear on the body. They don't always have the luxury of, I go in, I do my weights, I go home, I sleep for 3 hours, I come back and I do my takedowns, I go home and I come back and I do my jiu-jitsu. A lot of times they're at the gym all day doing stuff for their business, getting money via private lessons, and that might not sound like a big deal to people out there who are maybe not learned on the topic, but the truth is, that's still a form of stress.
Yeah, there's no recovery time.
Exactly. And, training is stress, just like stress in your life is stress. And the analogy I always use is you have a cup, we could fill it with stress. Once that cup overflows, that's when you get injured. That's when you get burnt out. That's when you get a skin infection in this case. So they definitely work. There's a reason why people use them. Do I think people take too much? Absolutely. Do I think some of these guys will have some health issues later in life? Probably, some of them, especially the heavier weight classes, just because of the body mass. But it's a reality. It's always going to be in sports. It's just a matter of what drugs and what doses, quite frankly.
Do you ever feel like, from what I'm hearing, a lot of it sounds like it's stimulated by ambition. But do you ever feel like there's a gray line between ambition and fear of failure?
I mean, it's almost the same thing, I feel like sometimes, right? I mean, I think it's almost, I would say it's almost the same thing, at least in terms of how the behavior manifests itself, right? Ambition or fear of failure could oftentimes cause the same behavior, or at least the same action to be taken, right? You're going to train harder, you're going to push yourself more, you're going to be potentially more disciplined. I think both of those things could cause that same outcome.
That's true. I'm actually thinking about myself. A lot of people say I'm very ambitious. I wonder, I have to ask myself the same question too, right? Am I really ambitious? Like, I just want to do all these things, or am I never satisfied and I just constantly move the goalpost? And I do think there are places in my life where it's just me moving the goalpost, because once I achieve something, I'm very hard on myself. I'm like, you know what? Let's try something harder, something bigger, something greater. It's never good enough. And I can tell you that's not a healthy feeling.
It's not. Are you a golfer? Do you watch golf at all? No, it's not. It has nothing to do with jiu-jitsu.
No, I don't watch golf.
My whole family plays golf except me. Okay, but someone sent me this clip the other day of one of the best golfers in the world. His name is
I go to outings, but other than that.
But just for business stuff, right?
Yeah.
This guy, Scotty Scheffler. It was a clip from a press conference, and people were asking him, like, how do you feel? You just won this big tournament. And he was like, I really don't feel anything. He's like, I win, and it feels good for a little bit. And then it's like, all right, what's next? And he's like, I love the lifestyle of training. I enjoy competing. But he was like, I've realized a long time ago that just winning these things doesn't give me the same sort of joy that I get from my wife or my children. Right. And I think sometimes you see athletes, we see a small snapshot of their victories or defeats and we become jealous of that stardom. But a lot of times you find out that these people are not happy, right? Because unhappiness is a profoundly strange thing in that it could motivate you to do something great. But also happiness, I guess you could say, does come from within. And so those gold medals are not necessarily going to make you feel great. Yeah, you'll get the dopamine hit. You're on top of the world. But sooner or later, the fans go away. You're by yourself. You got to look yourself in the mirror. And, I always tell like a lot of my clients, or the guys that I coach through jiu-jitsu, like if you're not, personally enough with steroids, you're not going to be enough with them. And that's a lesson I learned the hard way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wanted to get big and strong, got big and strong, and realized that I still had the same issues. And instead of attracting women, I attracted freakish dudes who want to see jacked people. So it was a total opposite perspective. You're like, I got to get jacked and strong. And then all of a sudden, all the women realize you're mentally ill because of how you look. you're like, wait a minute, what did I do this for?
Yeah. No, that's interesting, actually. The dopamine thing also with a lot of these performance-enhancing drugs indirectly increase dopamine levels. You have
For
these
sure.
dopamine hits that could affect mood changes. It can make you hypomanic. It can cause you to have mood fluctuation, disproportionate responses to triggers. But then you also crash. And then again, you have mood issues that are associated with that drop in dopamine, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you start playing with your mental health also, which fluctuates and is dangerous. And that's becomes a slippery slope because you lose your ability to find that sweet spot where you're happy. And a lot of times we see with patients that have attempted death by suicide and survived, the ones that have a very outward-facing, envious lifestyle end up telling you they're very lonely, which is very interesting.
It seems so common, right? And it seems like from the outside looking in, like you'd be like, well, why? You have everything that I want to have.
Yeah.
But that's a story that you hear over and over. And I'll tell you, the older I get, the more I realize how that could be true. You know, when you're 20, you're like, how could that be true? Like
Right.
you're a millionaire, you're famous, all these girls want you. But now that I get older and I see people who maybe haven't sought deeper satisfaction through marriage or through children or through the religious faith, you start to see like, oh yeah, you were chasing weird material things that ultimately will always degrade, always by their very nature, and you're gonna be messed up. And with athletes, dude, think about how dangerous it is to define yourself by what your body can do. It's like the most finite thing in the world, right? Not only is age inevitable, not only is Father Time quite literally undefeated, any injury could ruin your sense of self-worth. Right? If you are the best grappler in the world, everything is based on that. You get into a car accident, you suffer a serious injury, that's taken away from you, and everything you've ever done is to get to that one point. You have nothing else. You're looking at a pretty dark place, man.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
pretty
anything
scary.
where you have a single point of failure. If your whole identity is your Instagram account and you're an influencer, what if the platform goes down?
Yeah.
Your entire life goes down? Right, so you're attaching yourself to one point of failure, which is very dangerous. Right, that's why you should really diversify where you're investing your time, so you're well-rounded. That's what you always tell high school kids: be well-rounded, be good at everything. You never know where you're going to end up doubling down, or where you need to double down for whatever reason, which is really important.
I know you're interviewing me, but I have to ask you this because
Yeah, go
you're
ahead.
talking about dopamine stuff with anabolic steroids. Without having any HIPAA violations here,
Okay.
have you worked with people who've suffered like mental health issues as a result of steroid use?
Many.
And interesting. And what would you say like is the most common issue, or like what do you tell these people? Because one of the things that I noticed when I started being more honest about PED use and started doing content about 2 or 3 years ago was people would come up to me that saw the videos that I was doing at like my jiu-jitsu academy and be like, yo, dude, thank you for speaking out about that. I had the same problem. But it's like this masculine thing where you don't want to admit that you're going crazy, that you can't handle it. And I'll make videos that are very honest about this is what trenbolone does to you or whatever. And I know because I took it, but also my training partners all took it. And I saw what this stuff turned us into. Yep. And inevitably people will be in your comments like, you're a pussy, you can't take it, you're not. And I'm like, you're a crazy person, and you either don't want to admit that you're crazy, or you've been on this stuff for so long that you don't know who you are without being on it.
Or your stuff was fake.
But literally, yes, that's actually a great point. Yeah, like especially with harsher androgens. So, like, how do you deal with these people? Like, what do you tell them?
So the window where they come to you, rarely do people come to you when they're on a cycle and they're actually
Of course,
using, right? They are so happy, even if they're breaking things. And I had one guy rip a payphone out of the wall, and even then he's happy. He's so proud of himself for being able to rip. I feel like our listeners don't even know what a payphone is, but there used to be phones attached to walls. For the people who don't know, and one guy ripped it off, and he felt so strong, and like you're like the Hulk, which is awesome. Rarely do they come to the psychiatrist being like, I'm euphoric, help me. That's unusual. Even if they're hypomanic or even manic, they usually don't come. When they do come, it is after their cycle when they're crashing.
Okay.
Right, and that's when they're seeing their mood drop, their libido drop,
their gains go away.
Their gains go away. They suddenly get weaker. They're getting smaller. They thought they were going to maintain their gains. They didn't. That's when you start seeing them showing up. And that's when you really have to educate them. First, you educate them. They may or may not recover.
Which is true.
Some people do recover.
I didn't.
Yeah,
I didn't. I'll just be totally honest. I didn't.
It depends on the person. If you did fully recover, we order labs and we confirm that you recovered. If you didn't fully recover, then you start exploring replacement therapy to help. And then you assess any mental health issues, underlying mental health issues. So you do see people who have depression, mood lability, mood fluctuations. You try to stabilize their mood. Rarely do you see psychosis, but you do see suicidality.
For sure, dude. Yeah, absolutely.
You get a level of. You have a very high when you're running stuff sometimes, right? You're hitting PRs every week. You're getting bigger. You're taking pictures of yourself. You're like so obsessed with yourself because everyone's complimenting you. One of the biggest things people talk about is when you're running a cycle. Usually people get out of your way when you're walking.
For sure, yeah, absolutely.
And no one knows why.
Yeah.
No one knows, but something.
They can smell it coming off you, dude.
Yes,
it's something visceral. Yeah,
something they know to be holding doors for you, getting out of the way for you, asking you how are you. You're getting like you're attracting attention. That goes away.
Exactly.
And when it goes away, there's really bad withdrawal.
It's funny. The analogy that I always use for harsher androgens. Before we competed in powerlifting, we would all take trenbolone, which is probably the worst drug in terms of side effects, especially psychological side effects, especially the way we were taking it. But it was phenomenal for gaining minimal weight but getting crazy strong. So in a weight class sport, it was like exactly what you wanted. And the analogy I always used was going on tren was like going on an open highway, okay? And you're in a convertible sports car, and you turn the car on, you accelerate, and your favorite song comes on. You're like, yeah. And then all of a sudden, another song comes on. You're like, this is awesome. 3 or 4 songs later, you're like, I kind of want to put the roof up and listen to a podcast, but you can't. And you're in this weird, like, just go mode all the time. And it's fun in the beginning. And then after 4 to 6 weeks of feeling that way, your sleep goes to shit. Now all of a sudden, like, your mood is shot. Okay, you're getting really short with people. And that's like while you're on the drug. Now you take all that away. And the compensatory reaction in the body is so crazy. I used to tell myself when I would prep for a meet, I was not allowed to make any major life decisions. I couldn't start dating a girl. I couldn't break up with a girl. I couldn't start a new job or leave a job until all of the hormones had cleared my system and I was back to just baseline testosterone replacement, because I realized the decisions I made were so bad that I had to put my whole life on hold, because I was terrified that I would blow something up and then be like, oh no, what did I do?
Yeah, that's actually really impressive that you were able to do that, because
I blew some stuff up first. There's some harsh consequences.
Yeah, people come to me after and they regret some of the consequences.
I made some big mistakes that maybe we'll talk about off air, but I was like, okay, no more. If I'm going to keep doing this, like, I'm going to put myself in a padded room, okay, until this has been figured out. And then eventually I was like, why am I even doing this? I'm not getting paid money.
Right.
Bye. See you later. No thanks.
Yeah, you're absorbing all the negative and positive consequences. You're taking it all yourself, right? So that is harsh. Last question: how do you think ego plays into all of this? Because early on, people are running stuff. They want to get bigger. Their ego is getting bigger. But then if they're training in jiu-jitsu and they're early on in their career, they're losing every match. They're getting their ass kicked. How do you control? And this is ego in a colloquial. I know this is like a mental health show. There is also like Freudian ego, but
of course,
ego here in like a colloquial sense. How would you say you keep your ego in check so you don't overreact to situations?
I think it takes a lot of mental preparation and, to a certain extent, brainwashing yourself. Because I've been on both ends of this. When I was powerlifting, my ego got me in a lot of trouble. But weirdly, the turbulence created in my life by my ego-driven decisions made me a phenomenal competitor. And in that respect, I almost understand the Lawrence Taylors and the John Joneses of the world who have these incredibly turbulent personal lives, but somehow manage to cycle that energy into being an amazing athlete. That is a thing. Like, there's a reason why Tiger Woods started losing when he stopped, spending time with hookers. I mean, I think he thought he was invincible. He did crazy stuff, all ego-driven stuff. Then when his ego was crushed, his success began to be greatly diminished. I think in the context of jiu-jitsu, it was like, I step on the mat. Okay, I'm an instructor at this school. I'm a brown belt. I try to take pride in the fact that generally I'm in probably the top 20% of the guys in any given room that I'm in. Maybe higher, maybe lower, depending on the level of the room, of course, okay? And I am going to defend that. But you have to be realistic about how you defend it, right? If I'm going with someone who's a world champion, of course, I'm going to try my best, but I also understand that nature is not fair, okay? And that they're better than me. All I can do is give a good account of myself, and if they kick my ass, they kick my ass, and it is what it is. Maybe I only will really truly test myself and be upset maybe a little bit about the outcome if it's someone of similar size and experience level where I could really get an accurate assessment of where I'm going. But even then, some days it's just not your day, and some days it is. I think you just have to know when to care and when not to care. I think that's the only answer that I could really give. Like, I still train probably unreasonably hard for a guy who's 39 who has kids, but it's kind of what I love. I just, the sense of satisfaction I get from training really helps me get through the day, and I just can't help but think all those little things you overcome, all the self-doubt in the middle of a workout, be it someone's on top of you or a hard conditioning workout. I'm worried if I stop sharpening those swords that it'll go away and then I won't have it for the rest of my life. And maybe I'm driven because of ego. Like, I still want to be a fit guy. I took a lot of pleasure in going to my 20-year high school reunion and being the only in-shape person there. You know what I mean? So sure, there's ego involved in that. Right. But I guess with martial arts, I think it's selective application of ego. I think I would probably say that. I think the best competitors in the world who have the most sustainable careers, they don't care about getting tapped in the practice room. In fact, they almost view it as a badge of honor. Like, I tried something new and I got caught, whatever. It works, it doesn't work, who cares? But they'd probably rather die than lose on game day. And I think it's kind of like nuclear energy. Like, we could either harness it to build something great, or we could annihilate an entire civilization with it. Right. And I think you have to learn that. But unfortunately, I think you are going to get burned by it. You probably have to, right, before you actually learn how to harness it. So I think that's what it is. You got to learn when to let it control you to a certain extent, because there are times when that's helpful. And then when it's negative, you have to learn to take your foot off the gas. And that's just experience and guidance, I think.
It's actually really healthy to be able to assess where your ego is and have that level of insight and that level of emotional maturity. That's not easy. Just the other day, my son, the opposing team, ran a really nice play, and after the game, he told me that was a really nice play, wasn't it? And I was pretty impressed. I was like, yeah, it's pretty cool that you can acknowledge that the opposite team ran a really nice play.
There are grown men that wouldn't say that. And they play professional sports. Yeah. Like, that was terrible. Like, to this day.
Yeah.
Grown professional athletes that will not say that.
So I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive that you can, like, appreciate that kid ran a good play, even though he's not on our team.
It's funny you say that. I'll stop talking right now, but this is when I train with world-class guys, that's actually how I feel. Like, when I'm training with Jason or some of the world champions he brings in, I'm trying my best. Like, I want to see how I match up with these guys, but they'll hit a technique on me, and I almost, to the point of where I found myself watching them, I'm like, that was pretty awesome. Like, some way they took my back or took me down or got entered into my legs. I'm like, dude, that was so sick. Like, I'm not even mad. Like, I did everything right, and you still beat me. Like,
exactly.
You're the man. You're the man. What else could I say?
It's pretty nice, right? So having that level of insight is huge. But I think the takeaway from everything I've heard in this entire conversation is really knowing how to use pressure wisely, and using it to your advantage. And I think to our listeners, if you're going through something and you're feeling a sense of pressure, effectively grabbing the bulls by the horn and using that energy and that pressure to your advantage, and extracting value from it when you can, and pushing it away when it's not adding value. And seeing where it's